Welcome to episode 84 of your CYSA Plus Prepcast. In this episode, we will examine directory traversal vulnerabilities, a serious threat to web applications and server-side file systems. These vulnerabilities occur when attackers are able to manipulate file paths in such a way that they access files or directories outside of the intended scope of the application. Improper input handling, insecure coding patterns, and overly permissive configurations can expose sensitive files to unauthorized users. Understanding how these vulnerabilities work, how they are detected, and how they can be prevented is a key responsibility for cybersecurity analysts and directly supports success on the CYSA Plus certification exam. Let's begin by clearly defining directory traversal, also referred to as path traversal. This vulnerability allows attackers to access restricted directories and files by injecting specially crafted input into file path parameters. For example, a request might use @characters to move up the directory structure. If the application fails to properly validate or sanitize the input, the attacker can reach files outside of the intended folder, including system files or configuration data not meant to be exposed. This makes directory traversal a high-risk issue due to the potential sensitivity of the accessed content. The most common technique used in directory traversal involves sequences like /, which instruct the file system to move up one directory level. By chaining multiple instances of these characters, attackers can traverse multiple levels until they reach the root directory. From there, they can specify a file path to a sensitive target. On Unix-based systems, this might include files such as /etc/pub, while on Windows systems, the target could be boot on I, or similar configuration files. These attacks exploit the assumption that users will only supply benign constrained file names, an assumption that often breaks down in real-world scenarios. Directory traversal flaws often originate from file download features, image viewers, or dynamic content rendering modules that allow users to request files using URL parameters. If the application directly incorporates the user input into the file path without validating or constraining the location, it becomes possible to manipulate the path. For example, a download link such as /download, file equals report pf could be manipulated to /download, file equals // etc. /psw. Without safeguards, the application would retrieve the file and deliver it to the user's browser. Analysts recognize that inadequate input validation is at the core of most directory traversal vulnerabilities. Applications that fail to properly sanitize input or restrict file paths to a safe list are highly susceptible. Insecure file handling logic, insufficient access controls, and flawed server configurations further compound the problem. When developers do not implement guardrails that limit file access to a specific directory or file type, attackers can exploit these gaps to locate and exfiltrate sensitive information. Attackers actively seek directory traversal opportunities as part of reconnaissance during web application exploitation. They look for parameters that handle file names, logs, or file paths and experiment with injecting traversal sequences. The goal is to read files containing usernames, passwords, configuration secrets, source code, or log entries. These files can then be used to support further attacks, including privilege escalation, lateral movement, or the discovery of additional vulnerabilities within the target application. Directory traversal vulnerabilities are particularly dangerous in environments where user-supplied input is used to retrieve content. Examples include document download portals, file upload utilities with preview functions, content management systems, and custom-built APIs for retrieving reports or logs. Applications that dynamically read files based on user input without employing rigorous access control and sanitization mechanisms are at significant risk of exploitation. Cybersecurity analysts use a combination of automated and manual techniques to identify these flaws. Tools like Burp Suite, OWASP Zap, Nikto, and Nessus contain modules specifically designed to detect path traversal attempts. These tools test known file handling parameters by injecting traversal payloads and observing the application's responses. If the application returns unexpected content, such as partial system file data or error messages revealing file paths, the scanner will flag a potential directory traversal vulnerability. Manual validation remains a critical component of accurate detection. Analysts review the behavior of the application by crafting custom requests, injecting variations of traversal strings, and checking the server's response. They may use base64 encoding, URL encoding, or other obfuscation techniques to bypass naive filtering mechanisms. Manual testing also uncovers edge cases and logic flaws that automated tools may miss, such as platform-specific directory handling quirks or unusual character parsing issues in certain web frameworks. Staying informed is essential for managing directory traversal threats. Analysts regularly consult vulnerability databases, security advisories, and threat intelligence feeds to identify current exploitation trends, vulnerable software versions, and evolving attack techniques. Threat actors continuously refine their payloads to bypass new security measures, and analysts must be ready to adapt detection techniques accordingly. Timely awareness of zero-day vulnerabilities and their exploitation patterns allows analysts to proactively harden systems and prioritize assessments of potentially affected applications. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other security courses on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Effective mitigation of directory traversal vulnerabilities starts with secure coding practices that explicitly control how file paths are handled within applications. Analysts emphasize the importance of constraining file access to predetermined directories and disallowing user input from influencing critical file retrieval logic without validation. Developers should never use raw user input directly in default operations. Instead, they should apply strict rules to sanitize inputs and ensure that only safe, expected file names are accepted. Using predefined mappings between user input and actual file paths can prevent attackers from crafting malicious paths. Input validation is one of the most important defense mechanisms against directory traversal. Analysts implement input validation techniques that sanitize user-supplied paths by rejecting or neutralizing traversal sequences such as .. characters. These techniques include removing or encoding any occurrence of directory navigation strings. Validation also includes ensuring that only whitelisted characters are accepted and that file names conform to a strict pattern. This makes it significantly harder for an attacker to manipulate paths and access unintended directories or files. Access control mechanisms complement input validation by restricting the files that can be accessed through web interfaces. Analysts configure applications so that only files in specific directories are accessible and that each file requested by a user is checked for permissions before access is granted. File permission management is also critical. Analysts enforce strict file system permissions so that even if an attacker identifies a traversal vulnerability, they are unable to retrieve sensitive files due to operating system-level restrictions. Files not meant to be exposed to web interfaces should be stored outside the public directory structure altogether. Secure file access design often involves creating a mapping between logical file identifiers and physical files stored in protected directories. This approach ensures that users cannot manipulate file paths through their input. Analysts also encourage developers to return access denied errors or generic messages when unauthorized file access is attempted, rather than revealing directory structures through verbose error messages. Web application firewalls serve as an additional layer of defense against directory traversal attacks. Analysts configure WAFs to detect and block suspicious requests that include traversal patterns, such as repeated .. sequences, encoded slashes, or known sensitive file paths. These WAF rules prevent known exploitation payloads from reaching the application logic. Additionally, WAF logging provides analysts with visibility into repeated or patterned attempts to bypass file access controls, supporting both detection and incident response workflows. Server-side configuration hardening further reduces directory traversal risk. Analysts disable directory indexing features on web servers, preventing users from browsing directory contents through the browser. They also configure web servers to serve only specific file types or from designated directories. Server access rules are applied to restrict access to internal files, scripts, or configuration data. This prevents attackers from using traversal techniques to reach protected locations, even if an input validation flaw exists in the application itself. In the software development lifecycle, analysts play an active role in reviewing code for insecure file handling logic. Regular code audits and secure development reviews are essential for identifying traversal vulnerabilities early before the application reaches production. Analysts focus on reviewing modules that process file uploads, download links, dynamic image rendering, log retrieval, or other features that involve interacting with file paths. These areas are consistently high risk and are often targeted by attackers seeking to gain unauthorized access to system files or application data. Automated scanning tools are integrated into CI/CD pipelines to identify directory traversal flaws as soon as code is pushed to version control systems. This ensures that insecure file path usage is detected immediately without requiring manual intervention. Analysts configure these tools to test form inputs, query parameters, and URL paths for known traversal patterns. Continuous scanning prevents developers from introducing vulnerabilities that may go undetected during functional testing or quality assurance phases. When traversal flaws are identified, timely remediation is critical. Analysts ensure that vulnerable code is updated to enforce strict path handling, validated against a test environment, and rescanned to verify the issue has been resolved. In cases where applications cannot be immediately patched, compensating controls such as WAF rules, server-level path restrictions, or access token verification mechanisms are put in place to reduce exposure. Documentation of the remediation process ensures transparency and provides a reference for future audits or regression testing. Education and training ensure that development teams remain aware of directory traversal risks and mitigation strategies. Analysts conduct training on secure file handling practices, review common traversal payloads, and demonstrate how flawed logic can be exploited. Developers learn how to avoid insecure APIs, how to validate file paths correctly, and how to structure file-serving logic securely. Training also emphasizes the importance of least privilege access controls and logging mechanisms to detect and investigate potential exploitation attempts. To summarize Episode 84, directory traversal vulnerabilities allow attackers to access sensitive files outside the intended access boundaries of an application. Preventing these vulnerabilities requires strict input validation, proper file access controls, hardened server configurations, and thorough security testing. Analysts play a key role in identifying, mitigating, and preventing traversal risks across the software development lifecycle. These practices not only support your CYSA Plus exam preparation, but also help organizations secure their file systems and web applications from unauthorized access and exploitation. Stay tuned as we continue your detailed journey towards CYSA Plus certification success. Thanks for listening. To learn more about cybersecurity, please visit baremetalcyber.com. There you will find best-selling books, videos, and even more free cybersecurity training courses. Please subscribe to the Prepcast and our various podcasts. And thanks for listening.